Hello and welcome back to Nate the Hoof Guy. Today's video, we have got 6768 back in the chute. Now this girl we first saw about 10 months ago when she was suffering from a pedal bone fracture. But now she's back, it's time for her maintenance trim, so we're going to get a good look and see how that foot has healed all these months later. So today I'm going to show you all 4 feet of this trim, starting with the right front because that's where I start when I trim a cow. I start at the right front and then I move to the back feet and then I go to the left front. Just the way my controls work on my chute, it's the most natural workflow. Get this front foot done and then we'll do a recap of all of the trims that we did before so you can get an idea of how much progress she's made coming back now. Now moving on to that right rear foot, this was the foot that was injured all those months back. We had some sole separation. We ended up basically removing that entire sole section, what appeared to be a white line lesion. What we found out later on the next trim, she actually had a pedal bone fracture at the time. So we had to take care of that. We got that bone out of there. You can see that here. It was a pretty large chunk of that pedal bone. We wrapped that up and we sent her on her way, put a block on. Some months or weeks later, I should say, we brought her back and this is what it looked like. And we got it cleaned up and she'd made some pretty significant improvement. And at this point, we're really trying to avoid any necrosis of that foot. A couple weeks later, again, we brought her back and this is what it's looking like. It's healing back beautifully, better than I could have ever expected. The very last trim we saw, there was still quite a bit of redness in that hoof, but where that hole was all healed back in. And now we're back today to take a look and see. Now we're about 5 months, 4.5 months or so from that last trim that we did. So we're gonna see how this foot is healed. We look down to where that hole was. It's basically all filled in with brand new horn now. So let's get this foot trimmed and see what it looks like on the inside. If you've not seen those previous videos, I have created a playlist. I will put that link in the description below. It's got all of those trims in order and this one included, and you can watch the whole series as it unfolds and really see what this cow has done. So you can see there's a few marks yet in that typical sole ulcer site and one down in the white line that's likely we're gonna have to deal with probably for the rest of her for her life due to the fact that we're missing part of that pedal bone. So what I think is happening is that because we're missing that toe section of that pedal bone, we're putting extra pressure and asking more of the back half of that pedal bone. And that's why we're going to get some hemorrhaging in this typical sole ulcer site, regardless of what we do. This white line, this is just a little mark there. There's nothing of consequence there. I don't really need to worry about that. That typical sole ulcer site, though, I'm slightly concerned with. I'm going to put that foot down now, but at the end of this video, I actually bring her back 2 weeks later to take a look at that, not so much for her sake, but for my sake, so I can learn a little bit and try to figure out and see what happens after we trim her if that hemorrhaging goes away. So you'll see that at the end of this video. Moving on to that other back foot, that left rear, we're going to get that trimmed up. That one looks really nice. And then we'll move on to that left front and we'll let her go. Like I said, we're going to bring this cow back at the end for one more look just for me. So stick to the end and you'll see that. As I trim this left front, you'll notice some white flaky areas in there. That is what I refer to as pith, P-I-T-H. And that's basically a layer of horn that's dehydrated in there. That's how I determine how deep the soles are and how much I can take off. If I've still got some pith layer left, I know those soles are plenty thick. So now we'll let her go, see how she's walking right now. But then I'm going to bring her back. We're going to fast forward ahead 2 weeks when I come back to this farm, and we're going to take a look at that right rear one more time just to check out on that hemorrhaging spot. As I mentioned earlier, this trim now is not so much for her sake, but for mine. I want to learn a little bit about what happens with these pedal bone situations like that so I can know how to better improve these trims later on in these cows' lives. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm just going to model this area out now. What I want to see is did that trim that I did 2 weeks ago by correcting the angles in the foot improve this hemorrhaging? Did it take it away? And what I hope to do, or what I think is happening with these, is that, like I mentioned earlier, because we only have half of that pedal bone in there, we only actually have about half of that weight support in there. So we're putting a lot more pressure toward the back half of that pedal bone. So we're likely going to see hemorrhaging in that typical sole ulcer spot from that. But as I start to go to work here, I can see the more I model in, as I'm shaving this horn away, that hemorrhaging, excuse me, is going away. That's good, because that's telling me that if we do more trims with her, we can keep that hemorrhaging to a minimum. So that's kind of what we're going to do now with her, is just put her on a more rigorous trimming schedule and make sure that we keep that angle as optimum as possible so that we can avoid all of this. So as always, guys, thanks for watching, and we will see you on the next one.